Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, April 13th, 2022 meeting of the Fitchburg City Council Finance Committee meeting. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. We will begin with a public forum. First, I'll just say that committee members present this evening, Councilors Zarella, Van Hazinga, Di Natale, Cruz, and Boschman. Begin with the public forum. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the committee other than department heads or stakeholders that are in name on the petition or order, you may do so at this time. You may speak on any item appearing on the agenda for not more than 2 minutes. Please stand and state your name and address and the item on which you wish to speak. Does anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. 06422, a loan order appropriating $2.75 million to pay the cost of demolishing the existing and constructing a new Oak Hill water storage tank in the city as outlined in the enclosed order. Deputy Water Commissioner DeLine.
Good evening, councilors. The Oak Hill storage tank, which is on Oak Hill, of course, is in need of replacement. It was constructed back in the 1960s. It was basically blasted out from ledge, and some walls were formed, and then a liner was installed. And that tank is basically at the end of its useful life. We did try to complete some repairs there in the past to stop some leaking that was ongoing, and it was unsuccessful just because of the instability of the bedrock and the liner that's within it. So this is also on a list that's DEP has mandated we replace because of the leakage from the tank. We're losing about 10 gallons a minute from the tank. Of course, every day that loss is going on. It's a tough site. There's a limited area. The other storage tanks, if anybody's seen, probably the ones that, if you've been by the ones on Ridge Road, you can see there's a pre-stressed concrete tanks. This one actually is going to be built back in the same spot. That tank is going to be demolished and installed in the same spot where they're actually going to form concrete and pour it against the bedrock rather than trying to reline it or something like that. So it makes it a tough site because of limited access and constructing a tank that's not standard nowadays. We looked at other options, including a glass-lined steel tank, elevated tank, or something like that, but this was still the most cost-effective way of replacing that tank. In addition to some other work going on other tanks, there's some repairs at our overlook storage tank that are minor, and also putting in mixers in a couple other tanks just to reduce the amount of ice formation that occurs during the winter and causes scouring on the inside of the tanks. We did get approved. We applied for SRF funds, and we did get on the initial list, the intended use plan. We're in the top quarter of all the applicants in the state based on scoring, so we anticipate that we will get SRF funds, which includes some loan forgiveness because of the city's financial, the income levels and so forth, something in the range of 13 to 17%. So that'll help, bring the cost down a little bit. So, but we're looking to borrow $2.75 million to complete the project, and like I said, the other minor repairs, which are just a very small portion of it at the other tanks, and then all the city's tanks, water storage tanks, will be in good condition for hopefully another, who knows, 50, 60, 100 years. So, thank you.
When is this work slated to begin?
It would begin after July 1st. It would be occurring in the next fiscal year, and hopefully get it done by the end of the calendar year or sometime over the winter months. So. And
will this work disrupt service in that area?
We have 2 pump stations, one on Rollstone Road and one at the Oak Hill pump station. We set those up so they can actually run on pressure where we can shut off the tank. However, it does affect fire protection because we don't have that large volume of storage available in those events. So it's something we'll have to be aware of. But otherwise, people shouldn't see any change in their service whatsoever. Matter of fact, we do quarterly testing on the Oak Hill tank where we actually shut off the tank and run off those 2 pump stations, just to monitor what the leakages out of the tank to make sure it hasn't worsened at all. And nobody, we haven't heard any issues or complaints. It should be pretty seamless. Like I said, the only thing we need to be, aware of during this period is when there might be a fire or something like that. The pump station still should be able to keep up with all of that, but if it was a fire with a lot of, water usage plus a water main break at the same time in the Oak Hill system, that might cause some issues, but we'll make sure that, we coordinate that with the fire department to be aware to notify of us, on any of those type of events.
Thank you. Councilor Boschman.
Question, whereabouts on Oak Hill Road is this tank? I never seen it.
What's that?
Whereabouts on Oak Hill Road is the tank? I never
It's up
saw it.
on, where the tower is on Oak Hill Road?
Yeah?
Oak Hill, it's
Yeah.
right next to that.
Oh, it's way up.
Yeah, it's in bedrock and only is above the ground by about 4 feet, so unless you actually get right up to it, you don't see it. It's basically recessed in the ground.
Now, my question to you, can the water department sustain all this debt? I mean, with this will bring you up to almost $10 million.
Yeah, this will be the end of what we can afford. We're actually going to be undergoing a rate study. We haven't had a rate increase in a number of years, so for future projects, we'll have to have some rate increases to cover those, so.
Now, can I also ask another question? Under the opera fund, did you apply for this under the opera fund?
No, we did not.
Why not?
We had already started the process with the SRF funding, and we put in some other projects under the ARPA funding, so including water mains on Boulder Drive.
Yeah, I understand. I saw that, 3.5 million.
We knew there was limited funds with that. We had a very good chance of getting money through the state, through the SRF fund with some loan forgiveness. We thought that was the best approach for that would actually, be able to utilize that funding there, so.
So you're talking about 10 to 13% that we can save on the SR fund? So
Probably a little bit more, 13 to 17%, so.
So, Councilor, Mr. Chair, what would that be? How much savings would that be if we save 2 3/4 on the SR, say 15%?
It's around 400,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, roughly, give or take.
it's, about 400,000.
400,000? So what's going to be the interest rate that we have to pay back?
2%,
2%, so for 20 years?
yes.
So what would that bring that up to?
I don't have a loan payment calculator in front of me.
Well, I
It's
figured
compounded
you're the
interest, so,
accountant.
well, no, I could tell you in a second, Council, if I had Excel with me,
Yeah.
but, I mean, you just don't take 2.75 million and times it by 1.02. You don't just do that. Because you're paying a lot more interest up front, so you got to factor in how much interest. So, I don't know, do you have that number, Mr. Auditor?
No, I was gonna say 2% of 2,750,000 is, what, 55, let's see, 550,000?
Right.
So that's the first year, 550, and then it goes down after that.
Right, it drops, so,
Sorry about that, Kevin, I should have told you about that.
it's simple to just do the 2%, but, if I had a loan schedule in front of me, I could really give you an exact number, because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to math, so, yeah, but 2,750 times 1.02 is 2 as Calvin said, it's like 55,000, and then times it by 20, right? So he's in the ballpark, it's over 500,000.
So, Mr. Chair, so it's fair to say, and John, it's fair to say, all we're saving is the interest, 400,000.
Probably about that, a 0% loan, so.
So, now let me ask you another question. Could we sustain it one more year and wait for the opera funds to come out? So you won't have to take out the 2.7 and we can prolong the rate study?
No, it really needs to be done because there's other projects coming up. I mean, it needs to be done, so. We've held the rates for quite a while, and we're seeing, such an increase in materials and costs going on right now that need to be factored in. I mean, we're seeing a 30% increase in some of our chemicals, due to everything that's going on globally. it's something that really needs to be looked at, and, I would rather not have a water rate increase, but we're still some of the lowest rates in the area.
We are?
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't know about that.
yes, we are.
Are we?
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of cities and towns are over, over $6, $7. Even the smaller ones are now up over $6 to $7 per 100 cubic feet. We're at 420, so we're significantly lower than quite a few of them. Which is, we have a water system that was set up to serve mills and everything else. We have a lot of infrastructure for what we now serve, so our system's going to cost more to operate than, most other cities and towns, because they were never set up to serve all these mills. We can't just start eliminating water mains all over the place and, infrastructure and things like that, so we need to maintain that. So for us to keep our rates at these levels for this length of time, I think is a pretty good thing, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I would prefer, to be honest with you, Mr. Chair, I mean, you got my hands tied here, but I would prefer to use, in the auditors here, to use our opera funds. That's what the government gave it to the people for.
We also have a deadline to complete the project by the end of this year through Mass DEP, so, and we, as far as the ARPA funds, there's certain projects through the Mass DEP SRF funding that will be funded and some that won't. This one was, DEP encouraged us to borrow from them because it's a type of project that we, have a leaking storage tank that they've told us to fix that's going to score very high. Some other project may not score very high, so, you have to look at what loans you can get through the state. 0% loan is pretty good, once you balance it all out. So I still think it's our best, choice. And if there's, funding for other water projects that the ARPA funds could be applied to, that would be, it isn't like this is the only project we have. We have plenty of projects, so right now, where DEP wants us to have this money, just so we can get this tank repaired. And, we scored well on, what they do for a rating system. So I think it's the most prudent thing is to utilize this funding.
Yeah, I understand that. Because remember the last time I told you my tomatoes would cost me $10 a pound. Now, if we're gonna have another race, then it may be $15 a pound. So, anyway. All right, Mr. Chair, I yield the floor.
Councilor Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question for you. In the past, we've done some infrastructure work with the water, and it's very old, the infrastructure beneath the ground. How will this project affect that? And
I couldn't quite hear you.
sure, in the past, we've done projects, and our infrastructure is very old, our water infrastructure. How will this project affect that infrastructure moving forward?
Well, it's being a great improvement because that tank is eventually going to fail at some point. So, without that tank, we wouldn't have, the fire protection and, pumps are mechanical systems. So, we could have a problem with those. I mean, this tank is vitally important for that pressure zone of the city. There's other projects that we need to do. There's water mains we need to replace, but right now this is at the top of the list as far as getting this done, to make sure that that the people in the Oak Hill area do have water.
And the integrity of the lines isn't going to be put under more pressure from the new system?
No, it's going to be, there'll be a small increase, maybe a PSI or two, because we did have to make the tank a little bit small to fit it in there, so it's going to be a little bit taller, but it's not anything that anybody will even notice. So it's not going to. Our Oak Hill system is actually one of our better systems. We don't have as high pressures as we do, like for say the high system. We have 4 pressure zones, so it won't have any effect on the piping up there. Plus, all that piping is newer as well. So it's one of the newer sections of the city.
Thank you. I yield the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Van Hasga?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that the tank is leaking, was it 10 gallons per
minute? Yeah.
per minute? That's a lot of water, so.
Yeah, it adds up over.
So there's a
It's like
substantial.
15,000 gallons a day. So. Yeah.
So there's substantial costs associated with
Yes.
losing that water, isn't there?
Yeah. So that's the other reason. It's like we want to get this done as quickly as possible. We've been actually working on the design plans because it is a complex project for over a year and a half. Once we realized that the repairs weren't going to be successful. So, like I said, it's a very unusual design. I think our engineers have done a good job figuring out the least expensive way to replace it. And so.
Yeah, so I think at that rate, I mean, we're just throwing away money, so might as well just fix it as soon as
And the
possible.
thing is, like, we don't know when it's going to worsen. We've been fortunate; it's been very steady over time. After we completed the repairs, there was like no leakage, but then we were doing the quarterly testing, and then about 6 months later, it started again. And basically, that lining, it's like a gunite line, but it is a bit flexible because if you walk across the bottom, we actually drained the tank and had work done in there. There's like layers that are just not adhered anymore to the bedrock that it's in. So, trying to seal those up and fix the cracks too, then you get the weight of water back in there and it finds a little spot in the ledge to push back down and open up a crack. Just the filling and draining of the tank over time, during, the week causes stress on that. So we just know that, that lining is fatigued from doing it for, 70 years, filling and emptying, that, that lining is just completely gone and can't be repaired despite our best efforts, so.
All right, thank you very much.
Whenever we have an infrastructure need like this, water is critical, essential. It's probably more important than roads. People, including myself, don't understand the importance of water and wastewater usage until it actually affects their home.
Absolutely.
Now, unfortunately for you in the water department, you folks are always at a disadvantage with the sewer department because residents get the bill and they see one number.
Yeah.
Most of them don't look at, well, this is what the water portion of that is, this is what the sewer is.
Yeah.
So the sewer department has had exorbitant increases for the last 10 years because of a federal regulation.
Yeah.
Not the water department. So when they get the bill, a resident gets the bill, $100 and something, 70% of that number is the sewer.
Yeah.
The water is a very small piece of it. I know from my own personal experience, when I get my bill, it's 1/3 of my bill, the water piece.
Yeah.
And so I look at what I spend on water a month, and I say to my wife, I go, geez, I spend more than that on coffee 6 days a week.
Yeah.
For quality water, I spend nothing. And we take it for granted. And we do have quality water. We've seen the quality test reports. They are on the high end of quality.
Yep.
And so the water we have in this city is a tremendous asset. And we talk about rate studies, let's be real. When we talk rate studies, it means we're going to have an increase.
Right.
But when it comes to the water side of the equation, the rate has always been historically very low. And one small infrastructure project is almost $3 million. Years ago, when we had our last rate review, I believe it was 100+ miles of main in the city that need to be replaced.
Yep.
I'm telling you, the water main replacement issue is just as bad as the roads, if not worse. And if you don't stay on top of it, we're gonna end up like Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be like that. So, when it comes to rate increases for water, the benefit of that is the water rate increase goes to water. It doesn't go anywhere else. It goes to do these kinds of projects and water main replacements so the water is not going through corroded lines. So when I saw this, I don't hesitate to support these kinds of loan orders. Whether it goes through ARPA or not, it's not like the water department doesn't have a shortage of projects that they couldn't go to ARPA for other than this. It's not like water only has this project and they have no mains to replace, no other infrastructure needs to fix or replace. This is just one of those, and we're fortunate enough where we're getting it at practically a zero interest rate loan. And, if you talk to the residents about what this project will entail and what it means for their own quality and safety, I don't think they'd be hesitant for us to support this either. And so when it comes to water infrastructure needs, I don't feel like my back is to the wall. We just have to do it. We have to invest in our infrastructure where we can, and where we can and when we can, but sometimes we don't have a choice. We try to stretch these things out as long as we can stretch them, and then we can't stretch them any longer. So I will support this. Councilor Zarella?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note, I have heard it said, I think by a geologist, but I could be misremembering, that water is one of the most destructive, abundant substances on the planet. We think of these low pH acids and stuff like that, but enough water running over something for enough time will destroy just about anything.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you guys, and the wastewater department for that matter, have been able to keep such old systems running reasonably well for so long is a testament to hard work and ingenuity. And I'm glad that we are finally starting to get into sort of a phase where we're not seeing how much further can we stretch it. We're getting around to, okay, now we're done stretching it. Now we've got to actually update.
Yeah.
Because where we're looking around, where we're sitting right now, we know what happens when you see how far you can stretch it and you stretch it a little bit too far. We saw that happen in 2012 next door, and we were stuck in a warehouse for, 6, 7 years or so? 8 years?
8.
So I'm glad that you're being proactive in doing this rather than all of us getting an email in the middle of the week or something saying, we have a problem, the tank just failed.
Right.
Because that always makes for great headlines, right?
Yeah. It's definitely not an email I want to send.
Yeah. So I'm glad this is happening. It'll have my full support. And again, I second what the chair said. People don't understand sometimes how important the work that you guys do is. Just take it for granted, both in terms of the actual services to residents and in terms of the sort of invisible maintenance, so to speak.
Thank you.
And so thank you for
Thank you.
all that you've done with that.
Council Boschman?
On this system that you're gonna put in, if we accept your plans, how long does it guarantee it lasts? Lifetime?
The tank,
Yeah,
it should be good for 100 years.
100 years?
This will be better constructed than the one that was constructed in the 60s, and that lasted 70 years. We started having problems about 3, 4, 5 years ago, so yeah, this will be much better constructed. It'll have, concrete walls, not uneven, blasted out bedrock walls, and the other storage tanks we have, they should be good. Some of them are 10, 20 years old, but those are still, we look at them and have them inspected every year, make sure that, by the tank manufacturers themselves, who, if they could find something wrong with them, they would, because they could get money from doing some repairs, but they're in good shape and they should last, 80 to 100 years. So, not saying that nothing's going to have to be done to them in the meantime, but there may be some, little things that happen like we're doing now, preventative maintenance on the overlook tank on a little leak that is near a pipe perforation, but they're definitely long-lasting things, probably some of the longest-lasting components of the water system.
All right, as long as they last, all right.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Make a motion to approve 6422.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 6422. If I see no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it's favorably recommended. And we're going to take out of order 08922, a resolution pertaining to a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services, Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant Program, as outlined in the enclosed resolution. The resolution states, whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services, is making funding available through the Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant Program, and whereas the DWSP program was established to assist municipal water suppliers to acquire land and interests in land for the protection of the public drinking water supply, and whereas the protection of its drinking water supply is a priority of the City of Fitchburg, and whereas the City of Fitchburg has identified a tract of land at 220 Russell Hill Road in Ashburnham, known as the Curlinger property, totaling approximately 49.43 acres that would be conserved for open space and protection of the watershed of the city's drinking water supply reservoirs. And whereas the City of Fitchburg intends to vote to appropriate and/or borrow pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, up to a total sum of $240,000 to purchase for conservation and water supply protection purposes, a conservation restriction on the Curlinger property, and whereas the city of Fitchburg intends to submit an application to EEA to fund 50% of the purchase price of a conservation restriction on the Curlinger property, plus 50% of eligible project costs. Now therefore be it resolved that the Deputy Water Commissioner be and is hereby authorized and requested to file an application with EEA for a DWSP grant, that the Deputy Water Commissioner be and hereby is authorized to accept grant funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to execute contracts and any amendment thereto in order to carry out the terms, purposes, and conditions of EEA DCS DWSP grant program, subject to the City Council approval of the expenditure of funds, and that the mayor be and is hereby requested to take such other actions as are necessary to carry out the terms, purposes, and conditions of the EEA DCS DWSP grant program. Mr. DeWine.
Oh, those are a lot of words. Yeah, this is a piece of property that North County Land Trust is working with us on. They actually brought it to me that the people were interested in preserving the property, and it happens to fall in the watershed to Level Reservoir. Now, there was a handout, I believe, that Calvin had passed out to each Finance Committee member. The first page shows the actual property on Russell Hill Road in Ashburnham. It's in the red outline. The second page shows the drinking water supply protection zones. The green hashed are Zone A's, which are the most critical ones, and the pinkish color are Zone C's. Even though it's closer to Fitchburg Reservoir, it actually falls in the watershed to Level Reservoir, which is the terminal reservoir to the treatment plant on Ridge Road, which means it's the reservoir from which the water to the treatment plant comes from. So it's a total of 49 acres. It has a significant amount of road frontage, which means it would be eligible for development with the A&R lots. These are some of the ones that we're kind of concerned about, particularly given that the Zone A for a tributary falls up within, near to that road. It isn't at the back of the property, it's right up there. And pretty much the majority of the property is Zone C, so it all falls within the watershed. So the third page just shows a survey of the property. There's actually it's been surveyed. Then the last page is a budget for the project. So the appraised value for the purchase of the conservation restriction on the property came out to $273,000. There's some additional, items that go along with that, for acquisition of the property. We were able to negotiate with the landowners that they would actually donate $56,500 of the CR cost to us, so they will get a tax credit for that. So the actual purchase price for the $273,000 appraised value will be reduced by that $56,500. Now, we're going to get a 50% grant if we, get awarded it on the $273,000. So the net cost to the city will be $80,000 plus some unreimbursable costs. It'll bring it up to about $95,000 to preserve that 49 plus acres in perpetuity, so it won't be developed. And we won't have to worry about, somebody putting in, houses right near the Zone A of that tributary. I've also, on this particular property, I've also asked for, agricultural restrictions. Sometimes we'll allow, some type of agricultural act or horses or something like this, but because the house is right there and near that Zone A, and we have had other problems in watersheds with that type of activity near our tributaries. We don't want those contaminants or nutrients getting into the reservoirs. It's not good for them. So we've restricted the property for that too. The property, the house itself, and right there they'll be able to have, regular, pets, maybe some chickens or, dogs and cats, of course, but not any, large scale type of a, farm or something like that. So that is a little bit different from some of the other CRs that we have obtained. So we're really well protecting that property to ensure that, there's nothing that goes on there that will impact the water to that reservoir. These funds come from the dedicated fund for land protection. We have a little over $290,000 in there, so we'll be using about $95,000 for that, and those funds are dedicated to land protection. They're from the conservation restriction that the city sold to Mass Fish and Game on the northern watershed property. So we're still, that was a number of years ago, more than 10 or so. So we're still working on that $500,000. You know, part of it, half went to the city and half went to the water department. So we're still working off that funding from that. And we've preserved hundreds of acres between the northern watershed and the southern watershed in the last few years. So we'd like to add this to those acreage that has been protected. Thank you.
Any questions? Councilor Zarella.
Not that it makes any substantial difference to the bottom line or to my vote, or I assume anyone else's, but just in the interest of strict accuracy for anyone who may have questions down the road. Line 3 of the reimbursable acquisition costs, I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Was that 120 in the final column actually meant to be doubled? It looks like it was supposed to be times 2.
Yeah, good catch. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I said, not that it makes any
No, I'm glad you
difference
pointed out. I'll make sure that.
percentage-wise, but
Yeah. I've actually, I mean, we're going to have to take out, you know, the net cost is $95,000, but we have to front some of the money. I included a little bit more from, you know, so we don't have to change anything. There's like an extra $5,000 just to cover something that did come up. So, so that's a good catch. We'll make sure that that's, you know, adjusted for the budget we send into the state. So thank you.
all right, no problem.
So
I
that
am a bit of a nitpicker.
That means the number would be about 3,000 more.
$240, $120, so.
Council, what line were you referring to? Line
Recording fees,
Yeah, it's,
recording fees.
third line down in the top
2 times
box.
120, okay.
so it's $120. It doesn't affect what we need to vote on tonight. I've got it covered just, you know, because there's all some things that are a little bit of, so I have a little bit of a buffer, so.
Okay.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the resolution 08922. If there are no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it's adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your taking it out of order. Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Just 1 second here while I... That's in order here. Okay, next, 6522. In order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $1,400,000 sin recharge against available funds and credited to Fire Department Capital Vehicle Replacement for the purchase of a new ladder truck. Chief Suarez.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for your time. So we're requesting this funding to replace our 20-year-old ladder truck. It recently went in for repairs. They gave us a call a couple of weeks later and told us that it was at end of life. Captain Gil Martin drove down there to Rhode Island, spoke with the technicians, so he'll be able to answer any questions that you guys might have in more detail about the issues that were going on with our ladder 2. The reason that we need a second ladder truck in the city, there's multiple reasons. One is if we do have a fire, we need one in backup to respond to any other emergencies while our front piece is at the fire. When our front piece goes out of service due to maintenance or repairs, we need one in backup. The ladder truck is very vital to what we do. It has all of our rescue equipment. It carries everything from motor vehicle accident extrication tools, water and ice rescue tools, ventilation, search and rescue. So it is very vital to what we do. Again, Captain Roy here, we did put a committee together a few months ago to try to get ready because we knew that ladder 2 was getting bad. We just didn't realize how bad it was. So fortunately, we had a committee together. We kind of had an idea of what we wanted to get. So we're ahead in that regard. But if you have any questions on what we would like to purchase, Captain would be able to answer those questions.
So the question I've been asked by residents is, why 1.4 million? I don't appreciate what goes into these vehicles. It's high technology, and I'm sure the latter piece of it is a big part, because I remember a few years ago when we got a new pumper, 2 new pumpers, they were around $500,000 each.
Correct.
And this is almost triple that. So
Correct.
I'm assuming big part of that cost increase is the technology associated with the ladder, because I'm not a firefighter, obviously, but pumper trucks don't have a ladder on them. Is that kind of why this truck is a lot more expensive than the pumpers?
Yeah, there's a lot more
Historically?
to it. It's a much larger piece of equipment.
Yep.
It's double in size, double in weight, carries a lot more equipment.
Yep.
Captain Gil Martin can probably speak to more on the specifics of everything. He's our apparatus guru.
Yeah, no
for the
one was
department.
questioning the price tag in terms of the need. They're just, well, wow, didn't we get a pumper for like a third of that? I go, well, yeah, but it's
Yeah,
not,
it's
not the
a
same truck.
completely different piece of equipment.
Okay, so,
yeah, there's a lot more to it.
The other question I had was service life. So this is a 20-year-old vehicle that we've been using.
Correct.
At what point typically does a ladder truck last before it ends up needing to be serviced more often? I'm sure, like with the police department, within 3 years of getting a new police cruiser, it's over 100,000 miles. It's been, it's because it's used all day.
Yeah.
Same as a fire truck. At what point, because that question may come up later about how long can we get for this truck?
Yeah, unfortunately, the way they're made today with so many electronics and everything, right around 10 years.
10 years.
They start to really start to degrade and require a lot more maintenance and a lot more repairs.
Okay.
When we went down, we do take pride in our fleet. We take very good care of all our trucks. One of the things that the technician said was that they were surprised how good our Tower Ladder 2 actually looked for a 20-year-old truck. They were getting trucks 14, 15, 16 years old that were much, much worse shape than ours. But right around 10 years, they really start to degrade.
So your fleet with this purchase is probably going to be in better shape than usual, because with the 2 pumpers and a new ladder now, how many other pumpers do you have besides the 2 that we purchased? You got 3 or 4?
Total pumpers?
Total.
We have 7.
You have 7 pumpers,
5 pumpers and 2 tankers.
5 pumpers and 2 tanks.
Correct.
All right, so, I mean, the fleet's seen a lot of overhaul within the last 5 years, and by a lot, I mean, between the 2 pumpers and this, we're talking almost $3 million for
Right.
these 3 trucks. So these are not inexpensive vehicles. So, like the water rate, or the water loan, this, I saw the number and I said, well, that's what these things cost. And I'm assuming, too, when we get these orders going forward, especially for me, with my history here on what these things were years ago, I'm sure a lot of this is also just the cost of materials, too.
It is, yeah.
Everything is tripling, doubling, tripling, quadrupling in price. So I think that's another reason why I wasn't too surprised by this, because, a pumper is a baseline of $500,000, and that was 3 years ago, so I'm sure a pumper's probably close to $700,000 now or something.
Right.
And then if you factor that into 5 years later with the price increases in materials, and the fact that this truck is double in size, 1.4 doesn't strike me as out of the ballpark at all for what
Right.
these things cost.
Yeah, and I just
So-
spoke with a couple firefighters from Melrose. They just purchased a new engine and a ladder truck, and their engine was a Seagrave, and that was about $700,000. And their ladder truck, I think, was 1.8, 1.9 million. So what we're asking too isn't the most extravagant ladder truck. It's basically, what we need to get the job done safely for us and our residents. So these guys have done a really great job putting together what we do need. So it's, even though it is 1.4 million, which is a lot of money, they do go, even higher up than that.
So with the purchase of this new ladder, what is the other 2 ladder? I know you have ladder 2 and a ladder 3.
Yes.
What happens to those 2?
Well, ladder 3 will still stay in service. That'll be our reserve piece. Ladder 2, that was end of life, the one that we're replacing, can no longer be used. It's completely unsafe. Fortunately for us, we were able to make some phone calls and pull some strings, and Boston actually loaned us a ladder truck. They said that they'll lend it to us as long as we need to. If we do order this new ladder truck, it's going to take about 18 months for it to be built. And they offered to lend us their ladder truck for 18 months. So we will have 2 ladder trucks in this city.
So we're going to have a loan from Boston
Correct,
in the meantime, because this truck is going to take a year and a half to build.
correct.
Wow, okay. So that's another reason why it's a, so, okay. And last question I have is, for the vehicle that we're going to replace, is there any salvage value? Do we get anything from that truck by getting rid of it, or?
Yeah, the only thing that it'd be worth is the metal. We're working with E1, that's the company that we're looking to purchase our new ladder truck, trading it in. Unfortunately, it has basically no value. You can't even sell it to another city. It's just so completely unsafe.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I thought maybe like
Yeah.
parts, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
We did look into trying to repair this, so we looked at all the options that we could. They told us it'd cost between $400,000 and $500,000 to fix it. It'd take 8 months to a year. And when we got it back, we'd still only have about 2-3 years of service out of it. The engine, transmission, the drivetrain would still be 20, 21 years old, so.
And the loan from
That makes
Boston,
sense.
what is that costing us?
Zero.
Oh, so I guess we
Yeah.
owe a thanks to our counterparts in Boston for their generosity.
Yeah, definitely.
And is that standard in terms of
We've done
when
that in the
trucks need to be
past.
replaced?
Yeah, we've done that in the past.
Okay.
When I got on 25 years ago, we had a ladder from Boston, and shortly after that, our old ladder too went in to get refurbished, and we had a Lawrence ladder here. So some of these bigger cities have some extra apparatus, and they're willing to share it, which is nice.
Okay. Councilor Zarella?
Thank you. I never really thought about the fact that they don't just have, fire trucks sitting on the lot ready to purchase.
Well, we don't.
But that makes perfect sense. So I want to ask if you have any interest in taking a minute or so to rave. We're going up. We're updating a 20-year-old truck to a brand new one. Are there any technological upgrades associated with this that, while you guys were going through the specs and so forth, made you go, wow, that's going to be nice?
Yeah,
Anything you want to show off to the public?
Definitely. I'll let Captain Gil Martin, like I said, he's our apparatus guru in the department, so I'll let him answer that question. He can answer it in a lot more detail than I would be able to.
Counselor, it's actually a lot more basic of a truck. Everything is so technologically advanced right now. Everything has computers in it. We're trying to take a step back from that as far as the aerial operation, which is the most important component of the piece of equipment. That is strictly hydraulic. With all the other trucks that are out there nowadays, it's electric over hydraulics, which means a computer and a sensor and a lot of electronic gadgetry are operating the vehicle.
More points
we
of
wanted it,
failure.
yeah, correct. We wanted it to be a much more basic operating system with a lower profile. It's actually a smaller truck that we're looking at, and overall, it's more basic.
Okay. Oh, that makes perfect sense.
From a maintenance point of view, it's easier to maintain.
All right, cool.
You all set, Council?
All set?
Council Boschman?
That ladder too, is that from Clegon?
It used to be Helston Clegon. When we went down to one ladder truck in the city, ladder 2 is housed at headquarters as our backup.
So are you gonna bring back a ladder truck in Clegon? No?
No.
Don't plan to? Now, my second question, how high does it go? You're calling it a ladder truck, so it must go high, right?
The new ladder truck will be a 110-foot rear mount aerial, which is about 9 foot shorter than our current ladder truck. So we'll be able to get into areas, Counselor, in your ward, which is a very high-risk district. I mean, you got Daniel Street, Clarendon, Allen Place, Huron, Dumas. I mean, multi-story, 3- and 4-story wood frame buildings. Would we like to bring back ladder 2? Yes, if we get the funding from the council, that'd be great. We'd love to put a ladder truck back, but this truck is going to be squared away and ready to respond to those tight areas throughout the city.
Well, the only reason why I asked that question is because I don't want to limit ourselves, because I know we got a good planning department, and they're looking at changing everything around. Maybe we can make some real high towers out there, higher than the Wallace Towers or Pritchard Street. And I didn't want to limit ourselves, maybe we can go 40, 50 feet higher.
I think the ladder trucks today, especially the 110-foot, will reach up to 10 stories.
10 stories?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You hear that?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 6522. If there are no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is favorably recommended to the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, councilors. Thank you all for your time.
6622, in order that the city of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the American Rescue Plan funds available for projects in the approximate amount of $50,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to cover additional hours spent by the Community Development Department on ARPA compliance and administration. Mr. Skorsky.
Good evening, councilors. As you all know, the first round of ARPA funding was approved by the council, the first $50 million tranche of funding. And with that comes new obligations for the city to conduct a variety of activities to make sure that we're in compliance with our use of these funds, to make sure that we have grant agreements with all of our subrecipients. Those grant agreements are reporting to us regularly on what they're spending on and how they're spending it and how they're doing so in accordance with ARPA regulations. And of course, there's quarterly reporting obligations as well. So many communities, what they're doing is actually hiring out either additional staffers or consultants to help work through this process. Working with Calvin Brooks, we devised a plan here to basically take an existing part-time admin assistant position within the Community Development Department and convert it to a full-time position for purposes of broadening the spectrum of what the Community Development and Planning Department can accomplish. And I say that because it's not necessarily a one-to-one where this person would be doing the additional ARPA admin activities, but it would give the department as a whole the flexibility to do it. So, we do have some good efficiencies within the department. Chief among them, we administer the CDBG and home funding, about $1.5 million yearly allocation from the feds. So we do have familiarity working with federal funding sources and the obligations and requirements that those carry along with them. We have familiarity working with subrecipients to make sure that they're submitting timely reporting, they're submitting all their invoices on time, we're approving those invoices on time. So our goal here would really be to work through some efficiencies within that program, our community development block grant and home funding, and specifically with our community development coordinator, Cindy Dalton, to take on some of those additional tasks and responsibilities, and then some of it to be balanced out by other staff within the department. But then it sort of requires a workload shift accordingly, and making this part-time position a full-time position would allow our admin assistant to take on some additional workload, but also help balance out the workload within the department to take on this new work. And really, most importantly, aside from ARPA, we're at a really important moment of transition within our planning division. Our principal planner is going to be retiring within the next year or so, and the admin assistant position plays a critical role as support for our principal planner, Mike O'Hara, and we want to make sure that we have continuity when he does retire, that we have somebody on staff who has familiarity with the ins and outs of the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, as Mike is really serving both of those roles as a liaison to those boards. And I think they're really complicated tasks, but frankly, because it's a part-time position, we have had difficulty retaining talent because they'll often look for full-time positions. And actually, the last two have moved on to full-time positions within other departments in the city. So it's a little bit of a balancing act and a way for us to accommodate the existing workload that we have while taking on new work within ARPA. Again, I think we're well positioned to do it. I think this will help us really see through the next few years as we're working on administering this ARPA fund. And yeah, at that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
So the part-time program assistant, Is there a person in there right now?
There is. We hired Herlin Jamie in October.
And this will convert that individual to a full-time position?
Correct.
Well, they will be spending a lot of their time administering these funds?
Yes, in partnership with other members of the team, and then I think some of the workloads from those members that take on additional ARPA will kind of fall within her purview, really depending on efficiencies.
Can you just briefly explain, like, what the federal requirements are for reporting, tracking? You said in the letter that they're extremely extensive and cumbersome in terms of administering these funds. They have, what do they require? Monthly reports, quarterly reports, status? What is the burden that they've placed on us with the administration of these funds?
So they've quarterly reporting that Calvin Brooks, I think, would be well positioned to speak on because he's been doing the reporting thus far, which has been pretty easy. We basically just stated we took in the money. We created a process. We've devised a budget. That budget's been approved. That's all the easy stuff, but really here forward, we're going to, when we do those quarterly reports, split out each and every of the 16 projects we have, which within 4 city departments, 6 nonprofit groups, and other public agencies, and really go through what the project is, basic project descriptions, but also what happened within this quarter, what spending happened within this quarter, and making sure it falls within compliance with ARPA criteria.
Okay, and my other question is, because this job is being converted to full-time, like everybody else, that when we have budget season, everyone's clamoring for full-time people.
Right.
Sometimes the mayor will throw a crumb by saying, I'll give you a part-time, because part-time doesn't have the dreaded pension and health insurance costs tied to it. I say dreaded because of our unfunded liabilities. So this is a way to get us a full-time position paid for by the federal government. And while I don't have any issue with that, considering the increase in cost on your budget is covered by the feds, this is just $50,000 for what? The remainder of this fiscal year?
I believe it covers about 22 months prorated, so a little under 2 years.
Of allowing this person to do that work?
Correct.
And so when is the ARPA, when are we done with ARPA? Like,
right.
I know we're going to appropriate the remainder of the funds early next year. When are we no longer required to perform any administrative duties with ARPA? 2025, 2026? 2026. So this person would be doing this for roughly 4 years.
Correct.
And this $50,000 would cover roughly half of those 4 years.
Correct.
My follow-on question is, why wouldn't this then be a $100,000 request to cover us the full 4 years?
So I'm going to defer to the person who brought the number to me, Calvin. I know part of it has to do with some of this, this is an interest-bearing account as well, so we're looking to, where possible, have this paid from.
My question here, and he knows this better than anybody with me, is that we're always very happy to get grant-funded full-time positions, like with the firefighters, which I can't stand, because, if we can't pay for it internally, we probably shouldn't have those positions, because once the grant runs out, we've got to then look internally to keep them online, whereas 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't bring them on because we didn't have the internal funds. So I'm in support of covering this person's position for those 4 years, whether it's 2 or 4, whether we got to come back for another 50. My concern then is, after the 4 years, is this position going to stay full-time? Because I know you'll find a reason to keep it full-time, or is it going to revert back to part-time? And I know we can't say now it's going to revert back because we've got someone who's in that job. Right. So my concern is not to cover the ARPA requirement. My concern is after the ARPA requirement.
Right.
And maybe I won't be here by then, or none of us will, I don't know, but I got to think about that long-term, so.
Right. I think the first question asked was about the 50,000.
Right.
And I think for me, that was just saying, okay, pick a number, let's do 50,000. Tom seems to feel the last 2 years. I wasn't sure. It's just, we've got the money, we've got till 2026 to spend it. Here's a number. We'll see how it moves along. And I think it depends on how quickly we roll out these programs and how quickly they spend. If these things all get done within the first year, and then we go to some very basic programs, there's not a lot of work for this person to do directly for ARPA. Where at first I thought it was something I could do because it's just reporting on spending. Well, as I've gotten into it, it isn't. It's contracts and subrecipients and monitoring salary information and a lot of other things that I said, okay, I'm just not in a position to know that or have the time to do it. And I think in the community development department, they're used to working with some of those things.
And so if we fail to report adequately or timely, what is the ramification to the city? Because I think that needs to be
Well,
made clear.
they can disqualify the spending.
Okay.
And then say, that's not eligible, you need to provide other justification or spend it somewhere else.
So
or
if
do
we're not
something.
transparent with what they seek, they can yank it from us on a whim.
So by way of example, I am almost done with the FEMA reimbursement for the COVID spending that we did between March and September of 2020. So that's a year and a half ago. And I am still sending them information because they want one more form or one more piece of information, or they want this detail or that detail. And it's mind-numbing how much they want and how much time it takes to get the $250,000 that we're going to get from FEMA.
Yep.
And so I think we have to make sure that we're following all the rules in order to not get into trouble with audits and those kinds of things.
Whether it's 50 grand or 100 is immaterial to me right now, because we could see what that carries us forward, and then if we need more, we can dip into ARPA again. I just hope if we go down that route that we set aside some monies from the remaining 15+ million for that purpose in the event we need it. And obviously, we don't commit it and then have to come back and make an adjustment. So whether it's 50 now or 100,000 to cover us 2 years or 4 years, I don't care. It's, we'll cover it when we cover it. My concern is when the grant runs out. And I guess it's a tough one because no one here is going to be able to tell me that. That's up to the mayor, whoever the mayor is in 2026, whoever is running the finance department in 2026. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's something that I have to consider in that you weren't getting this person full-time through the normal channels. Now you will be. What happens when the money goes away?
Right.
I guess I'm answering my own question that we'll have the mayor of the city, whomever that is in 2026, is going to have to deal with that when we get to that point.
And
I don't know.
yeah, and I'll say for my part, we're well aware that there is a finite grant timetable associated with this, but in full transparency to the committee here, I want to make sure 4 years from now, when that decision's being made by whomever is making it, it's an easy decision for them to keep it full-time.
Sure, yeah.
Because we've shown, I think, the value that this will create in creating efficiencies within our Planning Board and Conservation Commission, where decisions are often delayed because adequate support's not there. I think we've made great strides with grant development, not just within the department, which we have, I had to take note today, we have 9 different grant applications pending in some way, shape, or form that we're involved with, and we just received a $2 million Safe Routes to School grant that, ultimately was a benefit to the DPW. It's not going to be a project we're going to manage, but it's going to create sidewalks and pedestrian improvements around Memorial Middle School, and I think we're really helping to serve as sort of a grant development entity within the city, and I think between those two pieces together, I'd like to think it'll be an easy choice 4 years from now. But until then, I think we have every understanding that this is finite.
Every department has needs. Every department has justification. I always used to drive myself nuts. It's never for me about the justification. It's a balancing act. You need more people. He needs more people. He needs more people. I mean, just throw a dart at the board. Everyone needs more people. So it's a balancing act. These grants that we receive from the state and the feds, while wonderful, come with administrative duties that are very cumbersome. So we require people on staff to administer those grants because that's part of the deal of getting this money. So I will support this because it's being paid for by federal tax dollars, not local budget tax dollars. And if, you know, down the road, if we need to supplement this for ARPA still, fine, as long as it's coming out of ARPA. And I guess we'll deal with my concerns at a later date. I have no doubt that there will be justification to keep that person full-time, but, you know, like I said, it's a balancing act, but that's not even up to me or anyone here. That's up to the chief executive, whomever that's going to be, when the budget's submitted. So I will support this. I just wanted to keep that in people's minds, backdoor, that, you know, eventually the money will run out, and then this will be another position that we will have to address collectively between the mayor and the council on whether we want to keep it going or not, but that will, I guess we'll get to that point when we get there. Councilor Boschman.
I got a question. Maybe Kelvin can answer this question. On the 50, how come we don't charge the people that got the grants, the money from the opera fund, like, say, Fitchburg State got $500,000? We don't charge them a percentage of that for paperwork. I said that, you know, if it's a public entity like the unit, I mean, the library, no, because it's a city function. But these other, like Mark and all these places, why not charge them instead of them taking it out of here? I mean, we're doing their paperwork.
So we're doing their paperwork, but they're helping us provide it. And I think we could charge them for a fee for the service, but it's just sort of affecting the allocation we provided to them in the first place, right? So we also could, which we did, cut each and every proposal that wasn't a city. I think maybe with one or two exceptions, like the Fitchburg Arts Community, which had a finite amount of funding it needed to get that project to the finish line. But I suppose that could be something we'd look at, but I haven't seen that work in any other sort of grant management situation that I've been aware of or a part of.
Well, nobody ever tried it. Nobody ever tried it, right? Why can't we be the first to try it?
I guess respectfully, they would then request more money from us to meet that obligation. So we'd be charging ourselves, I think, in some respects.
Councilor, part of, if you recall, when we have CDBG or grant funds that were given to these organizations, they will say that part of the money they're requesting or we're granting to them includes administrative costs.
Yes, 200,000, I understand that.
Well, that's CDBG, but these other, like Mark or Luck or something, they do state, I mean, that's probably most of these expenses, is having someone there to perform those duties, in addition to administering the program. But if it didn't cover that, yeah, they would just come back to us for more money to do it. So they get us either way, which makes sense to me. That's what's required. So.
All right, Tom, I left you off the hook easy today.
Make a motion to approve 6622.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 6622. If there are no objections, I'll take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it's favorably recommended. Thank you. Last item on the agenda, 6722. In order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $55,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to Building Department vehicle replacement for the purpose of replacing an inspection vehicle. We don't see Commissioner Barbadoro here. Is there anyone here in his place? So,
My understanding is that this is to replace a vehicle that was in a car accident.
yeah, he provided his justification. I just don't know why he's not here tonight, but I guess it's for a vehicle that was damaged in an accident, if I'm not mistaken, for a plumbing inspector vehicle. And so the vehicle's beyond its useful life. It's damaged to the point where it would cost a tremendous amount of money to replace it. And he also mentioned in his letter that the vehicle was in the roughest of shape in his fleet. So that was the justification he provided. Councilor Van Hazinga.
I did have some conversations with Commissioner Barbadoro about this proposal, and the initial sum that he put forward was on the assumption that the city would have to buy a hybrid vehicle to meet the requirements as a green community, the purchasing requirements. But in looking at it, that it's not the case, that there's not a substantial actual improvement in gas mileage by their calculations with the hybrid vehicle. So he had mentioned that this should be reduced as he, sees what's available for a lower priced vehicle that would meet the requirements. So I'd assume that he was going to be here to have a plan to talk about that. So I'm not quite sure if this number is going to change in actuality or what the situation is.
I would suggest then that we hold this.
So moved.
Okay.
I have one question for the VP.
Yep.
Did you go to the mayor to ask permission to talk to the,
I did copy the mayor on the discussion.
you did?
Yep.
'Cause I
Counselor,
didn't do that.
you don't need permission from the mayor's office to contact the department head.
Oh, yes, you
gotta-
do.
you gotta
Yes,
keep-
you do.
You got to keep the office in the loop.
Not according to what I told. They was told today, the other day.
Well,
when
that's
I went-
not part of the discussion tonight.
Well, you brought it up.
Well,
I
you-
only
no.
asked him a question.
Counselor, you mentioned, you said something that is inaccurate, and I'm correcting you.
I don't find it accurate.
So that's all.
I make a motion, we hold.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to hold 6722. There are no objections. I'll take this in unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is held.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. There are no objections. We are adjourned. Thank you.